trash like you doesn't belong here. You don't get to breathe this air." The words, laced with venom and a lifetime of bitter prejudice, sliced through the quiet hum of the first-class cabin. Flight attendant Sharon Vickers, a woman whose smile was as thin and brittle as her lacquered hair, slapped Isabella Rossi hard across the face. The crack of palm against cheek was sharp, obscene, a sound that didn't belong in the hushed, sterile environment of privilege. The force of it snapped Isabella's head to the side, her ear ringing as a coppery taste filled her mouth. "That's what happens to thieves," Sharon sneered, her voice a triumphant hiss. She snatched Isabella's boarding pass from her hand, her knuckles white. With a theatrical flourish of contempt, she ripped it into a dozen small pieces. The shredded paper fluttered to the plush carpet at Isabella's feet. A pathetic mockery of a $2,000 ticket. "Now get on your knees and pick up your garbage," Sharon commanded, her finger jabbing towards the floor. "Then you can crawl your ass back to economy where you belong." Have you ever seen someone's life implode in a single, catastrophic moment? Have you ever witnessed a person so blinded by their own hate that they light the fuse to their own destruction? Stick with me, because what you're about to hear is a masterclass in karma. And if you believe that what goes around comes around, do me a favor right now, hit that like button, subscribe to Black Voices Uncut, and get ready, because this is a story you will never forget. The first-class cabin of Ascend Air Flight 815 had become a silent theater. 30 pairs of eyes, belonging to hedge fund managers, tech bros, and society wives, were fixated on the drama. A sea of smartphones rose, screens glowing as they hit record. They watched as Isabella, a young woman in worn jeans, a simple gray t-shirt, and scuffed sneakers stood frozen. A vivid, crimson handprint was already blooming on her olive cheek, a stark brand of shame. A man in a tailored suit from seat 3A whispered, just loud enough for those around him to hear, "Finally, someone with the guts to handle these scammers." In precisely 11 minutes, flight attendant Sharon Vickers would learn that she had just physically assaulted the 38-year-old billionaire CEO who owned the entire goddamn airline. 9:15 p.m. Departure in 24 minutes. Isabella remained standing. The sting on her cheek was a dull, persistent throb, a physical anchor in a swirling vortex of shock and a cold, calculating fury. She didn't kneel. She didn't even glance at the paper confetti on the floor. Her stillness seemed to enrage Sharon even more, the lack of submission a direct challenge to her authority. "Are you deaf?" Sharon's voice escalated, climbing into a shrill shriek that pierced the cabin's tranquility. "I said, get on your knees!" She lunged forward, grabbing Isabella's shoulders with both hands, her fingernails digging into the soft cotton of her shirt. She tried to force her down, to physically break her will. But Isabella stood firm, her body rooted to the spot. Frustrated, Sharon shoved her with all her might. Isabella stumbled back, her hip colliding hard with the armrest of an empty leather seat. "You are making this so much worse for yourself," Sharon snarled, jabbing a finger into Isabella's chest for emphasis. "Criminals like you always do." The word criminal hung in the recycled air like a toxic vapor. It was the accusation, the trial, and the verdict all in one. Sharon reached for the intercom phone. "Security to the gate for Flight 815. We have a violent, non-compliant passenger in first class. I repeat, a violent passenger." The commotion had drawn every eye. In seat 1B, Tiffany "Tiff" Monroe, a lifestyle influencer whose entire identity was curated perfection, had her phone positioned perfectly. She was live streaming. "Oh my God, you guys," Tiffany whispered into her phone, her voice a cocktail of manufactured shock and breathless excitement. Her perfectly glossed lips barely moved. "You will not believe the drama going down on Ascend Air right now. There is literally a scammer in first class trying to steal a seat, and this flight attendant is a total hero. She is not having it." Her viewer count, visible in the corner of the screen, was already climbing past 1,000. Comments began to flood the feed. "Finally, someone with a backbone. Good. These people always try this. Why can't they just follow the rules? That attendant deserves a raise. Zero tolerance. Call the cops now." The jet bridge door hissed open, and manager Marcus Thorne appeared, slightly out of breath. At 48, he carried himself with the weary authority of a man who had been dealing with other people's problems for 2 decades and was thoroughly unimpressed by all of them. "What's the situation here, Sharon?" he asked, his eyes pointedly avoiding Isabella, as if she were a piece of luggage that had been left in the aisle. "Attempted seat fraud, sir," Sharon reported, her voice ringing with self-importance. This individual refused to produce valid identification and became immediately combative when I questioned her obviously counterfeit ticket. Marcus finally deigned to look at Isabella. His gaze was a slow, contemptuous appraisal, a human price scanner calculating her worth. He took in the small, frayed tear at the knee of her jeans, the discount store t-shirt, the sneakers that had seen better days. His expression curdled with disgust. "Ma'am," he said, the word an insult, "I'm going to need to see your boarding pass and a government-issued photo ID. Immediately!" "She already destroyed my boarding pass," Isabella said. Her voice was quiet, eerily steady, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting around her. Sharon let out a harsh, barking laugh, and a few passengers chuckled along with her. "Because a blind man could see it was fake," she scoffed. "Look at her, Marcus. Does she look like she belongs in a $2,000 seat?" The passengers in the nearby seats were nodding in vigorous agreement. An elderly man in an expensive suit muttered, "Disgraceful. In my day, people knew their place." His wife clutched her Louis Vuitton purse to her chest, as if Isabella might snatch it. "I just don't feel safe with her on the plane," she whispered. Tiffany's live stream had exploded. The viewer count rocketed past 2,500. She expertly angled the camera to zoom in on Isabella's face, the red handprint now a lurid shade of purple under the cabin lights. "The poor flight attendant is just trying to do her job," Tiffany narrated with practiced sympathy. "Some people just have absolutely no shame." The comments were getting uglier. Typical entitled behavior. Why are flights always delayed by these people? Ban her for life. Press charges for assault. Marcus pulled out his official radio. "Ground control, this is Flight 815. We need immediate security response to Gate B42. We have a possible fraud and disorderly conduct situation in the first-class cabin." Isabella reached slowly, deliberately, into the worn leather messenger bag slung across her body. As her hand moved, the corner of a metallic, official-looking badge briefly caught the light. "Sir, if you would just allow me to show you my—" "Keep your hands where I can see them," Marcus barked, his voice echoing through the cabin. "Don't you reach for anything." Within 2 minutes, Security Officer Derek Hayes arrived, his muscular frame filling the narrow aisle. His hand rested casually, but purposefully, on the handcuffs clipped to his belt. Behind him were 2 uniformed airport police officers, their presence turning the spectacle into a full-blown incident. Passengers boarding in the back craned their necks, desperate to see the troublemaker. The digital departure board at the gate blinked ominously. Flight 815. Departure. 19 minutes. "What's the problem here?" one of the officers asked, his voice the universal, no-nonsense tone of law enforcement. "Clear case of seat fraud and disorderly conduct," Marcus explained with confidence. She refused to move and became aggressive when questioned about her fraudulent documents. The officer looked directly at Isabella, his eyes cold and suspicious. "Ma'am, Do you have a valid ID and a legitimate boarding pass for seat 2A? She destroyed my boarding pass, Isabella repeated, her voice still a pillar of calm in a hurricane of hostility. Sharon stepped forward, playing to her audience of passengers and Tiffany's growing legion of online viewers. Because anyone with eyes could see it was a fake. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know a scammer when I see one. She turned theatrically, addressing the captivated onlookers. This is why your flights get delayed, people. Because of entitled individuals who think they can lie their way into a life they haven't earned. Several passengers actually broke into applause. Tiffany's viewer count hit 5,000. The comments were now a toxic waterfall of hate. Arrest her now. These people ruin everything. Where first-class fraud needs to trend. The cockpit door opened and Captain Frank Olson emerged, drawn by the commotion. At 61, with a shock of silver hair and a uniform heavy with decades of service pins, he commanded instant respect. He took one look at the scene. The cops, the manager, the crying flight attendant, the defiant young woman, and shook his head in disgust. Ms. Vickers is one of our most senior and trusted flight attendants, he announced, his voice booming with authority. If Sharon says there's a problem, then there is a problem. Isabella's phone buzzed insistently in her bag. The screen lit up, showing a notification. 15 missed calls. Board of Directors. She ignored it. Marcus's radio crackled. Marcus, this is Patricia Walsh from Regional Management. I'm getting reports of a significant incident on 8:15. I need an immediate status update. Marcus keyed the radio, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. Completely under control, Patricia. Standard fraud attempt. We're removing the individual per company policy. Zero tolerance, Marcus, the voice on the radio replied. Our premium passengers pay for premium service and security. Remove her and permanently ban her from all future flights. The crowd murmured its approval. This was justice, swift and efficient. One of the officers stepped closer to Isabella, his hand moving toward his handcuffs. Ma'am, I need you to gather your personal belongings and come with us now. Actually, Isabella said, her voice still quiet, but now laced with an odd, unnerving confidence. I'd like to make one phone call first. Sharon snorted. You can call whoever you want from the airport police station after you're banned from this airline for life. Tiffany zoomed in dramatically on Isabella's face. Her live stream was now trending in 3 major cities. The departure board updated again. Departure, 15 minutes. Final boarding call. Time is up, Marcus declared. Officers, escort her off this aircraft. We have a schedule to keep. Isabella looked slowly around the cabin, at the sea of hostile, satisfied faces. The 31st-class passengers enjoying her public humiliation. The hundreds in economy straining to see the show. The thousands watching online, baying for her blood. She remained preternaturally calm. Before you make a decision you can never take back, Isabella said, her voice as steady as steel. I think you all should know exactly who you're removing from this plane. 9:20 p.m. Departure in 15 minutes. I don't care if you're the Queen of England, Marcus snapped, his patience completely gone. You are getting off this plane, now. The cabin erupted in a fresh wave of laughter and applause. Someone shouted, Finally, no more sob stories. The police officer stepped forward, handcuffs now dangling from his fingers. Ma'am, you need to comply immediately, or you will be arrested for trespassing. Isabella's phone buzzed again, but this time it was followed by a chorus of other phones ringing throughout the first-class cabin. A low murmur filled the air as executives and lawyers answered their calls, their faces shifting from amusement to confusion. Tiffany's live stream had exploded to 12,000 viewers. The comments were a torrent of impatience and vitriol. This is taking too long. Just drag her out. I'm never flying Ascend Air again if they tolerate this. Just tase her and get it over with. First-class fraud is trending. Justice served live. Sharon, now fully embracing her role as the hero of the story, took to the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely apologize for this delay. We are dealing with an individual who believes the rules simply do not apply to her. She walked over to where the pieces of Isabella's boarding pass lay scattered on the floor and ground them under her heel as if extinguishing a cigarette. "This," she announced triumphantly, "is what we do to fake documents." She then scooped up the shredded paper and, in a final act of humiliation, threw the pieces in Isabella's face. "There's your first-class ticket, Princess." The crowd cheered. Someone began a slow, rhythmic clap that spread through the cabin. Isabella brushed the paper fragments from her hair without a single flinch. "Sharon," she said quietly, "you might want to look more carefully at what you just destroyed." "I looked plenty," Sharon shrieked. "Fakes don't get more real the longer you stare." But something in Isabella's tone made her glance down at the largest fragment near her foot. Her face went pale as she made out a few partial letters printed in a distinctive font. Tinem exec. She quickly kicked the piece under a seat before anyone else could see it. Marcus's radio crackled to life again. "Marcus, this is Patricia. Corporate headquarters is calling an emergency meeting. Something about social media attention on Flight 815. What is your status?" The live stream viewer count hit 15,000. Tiffany was now providing a running commentary like a sports announcer. "Okay, everyone, it looks like the airport police are finally going to arrest this woman. About time. She's been holding up this entire flight with her ridiculous lies." More passengers had started recording, creating a multi-angle social media spectacle. A new player arrived on the scene. Linda Lane, the boarding gate supervisor, looking flustered and concerned. "What is going on here? My phone is blowing up with calls from multiple departments about this flight." Marcus tried to take charge. "Routine fraud removal, Linda. Everything is under control." But Linda looked at the sea of phones, the police, the live stream, and the palpable chaos. "This doesn't look routine, Marcus." Captain Olson stepped forward aggressively. "Ms. Lane, with all due respect, this is my aircraft. We do not negotiate with fraudsters." He pointed a rigid finger at Isabella. "Security, remove her immediately. I intend to depart on schedule." The pressure was immense. The officer moved in, clearly ready to make an arrest. "Last chance, ma'am. Come with us willingly, or you'll be carried off in handcuffs." The clock showed 12 minutes to departure. Tiffany's phone battery was flashing red, but she kept streaming, whispering to her audience. "Oh my God, you guys, this is like watching live justice. The entitlement of some people is just unbelievable." The comments grew more vicious. "This is why we can't have nice things." "Make an example of her. Press all the charges." Sharon, high on her power, grabbed the intercom again. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Senior Flight Attendant Sharon Vickers. We apologize for the delay caused by a passenger attempting to use fraudulent documents. The situation is being resolved by law enforcement." Her voice echoed through the entire 300-passenger aircraft. The reaction was immediate. Shouts of support came from economy. "Get her off. We're gonna miss our connections." Isabella's messenger bag was now slightly open, revealing a glimpse of official-looking, leather-bound documents. But in the chaos, no one noticed. The officer made his decision. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for trespassing and disorderly conduct." He reached for Isabella's arm. Patricia Walsh's voice burst from Marcus's radio, this time stripped of all professionalism, laced with pure, rising panic. "Marcus, I need you to stop everything. Do not remove that passenger. Corporate is in emergency session over this exact flight. Something about—" Marcus fumbled with the radio, turning the volume down. But it was too late. Several passengers had heard. "What did she say?" someone asked. Did she say don't remove her? Marcus waved a dismissive hand. Radio malfunction. Interference. But Linda Lane had heard it too, and she stepped closer. Marcus, maybe we should wait for— No waiting, Captain Olson interrupted. My flight, my schedule, my decision. Officers, arrest her now. The crowd was a powder keg. 15,000 people were watching online. Hundreds on the plane were demanding action. The pressure was unbearable. Isabella looked at the hostile faces, the recording phones, the approaching handcuffs, and the chaos she had orchestrated. Then she did something no one expected. She smiled. It wasn't a nervous smile or a defeated smile. It was a smile of absolute, terrifying certainty. A smile that said she knew something they didn't. Officer, she said calmly, before you arrest me, would you mind if I showed you something from my bag? No, Sharon screamed. She's trying to distract you. She probably has a weapon. A collective gasp went through the cabin. People physically recoiled. Ma'am, keep your hands visible, the officer said, his own hand now moving instinctively towards his service weapon. I understand your caution, Isabella replied, her voice smooth as silk. But I think once you see what's in here, this entire situation might look very, very different. The departure countdown hit 11 minutes. Tiffany's live stream audience had crested 18,000 viewers, all holding their breath. And Isabella Rossi was about to give them the plot twist of a lifetime. 9:25 p.m., departure in 10 minutes. With the officer's wary gaze fixed on her every move, Isabella reached slowly into her messenger bag. The entire first-class cabin seemed to hold its breath. She withdrew a worn, dark blue leather portfolio, the kind that had seen the inside of 1,000 boardrooms. No sudden movements, ma'am, the officer warned, his voice tight. Isabella opened the portfolio with a deliberate, unhurried calm. The first item she revealed was a laminated ID badge. It caught the overhead lights, reflecting an official, impossible-to-ignore authenticity. From a few feet away, Linda Lane, the gate supervisor, squinted, trying to read the small print. As the words swam into focus, her face went utterly, devastatingly white. "Oh my God," she whispered, her voice a strangled breath. The badge read in bold, official lettering, Isabella Rossi, Chief Executive Officer, Ascend Air Global. Sharon's triumphant expression froze and then shattered like cheap glass. That's a fake," she stammered, the words hollow and unconvincing even to her own ears. Anyone can make a fake ID. But Isabella wasn't finished. She withdrew a second document. It was printed on thick, creamy letterhead, the Ascend Air logo embossed at the top in shimmering, counterfeit-proof gold leaf. "This is my official letter of appointment," Isabella said, her voice still unnervingly calm, as she held it up for all to see. Signed by the chairman of the board of directors, dated 3 years ago, formally appointing Isabella Rossi as Chief Executive Officer. The radio fell from Marcus Thorne's suddenly nerveless hand, clattering loudly on the floor. Captain Olson lunged forward, snatching the letter from Isabella's grasp. His experienced pilot's eyes, trained to spot the smallest anomaly, scanned the official corporate seals, the intricate watermarks, the precise legal jargon. His weathered face drained of all color, turning a pasty, ashen gray. This can't be real," he stammered, his voice cracking. Tiffany's live stream chat exploded into pure digital bedlam. "Holy, so is this real? No way, no fucking way, the CEO? They are so fired. This is the greatest plot twist in history. I am screaming. Karma is a BR. And she owns the airline. Her viewer count shot past 25,000 as the clip went viral in real time. Isabella calmly retrieved her personal phone. She dialed a number from memory and put the call on speakerphone, the ringing tone echoing through the now tomb-silent cabin. Amelia Vance speaking, Executive Office of the CEO, Ascend Air. How may I help you? Hello, Amelia. This is Isabella. I'm on Flight 815 to San Francisco, and I'm experiencing a slight operational issue. Could you please confirm my identity for the crew and local law enforcement? There was a brief professional pause on the other end. Of course, Ms. Rossi. Ladies and gentlemen, you are speaking with Isabella Rossi, the Chief Executive Officer of Ascend Air Global. She was appointed by the Board of Directors in January of 2023. She is traveling to San Francisco for tomorrow's quarterly technology summit. The silence that followed was so absolute, it was a physical weight. Sharon Vickers' face had transitioned from pale to a sickly, nauseous green. She backed away from Isabella slowly, as if she were radioactive. I didn't know, she whimpered. I had no way of knowing. Wait, one of the police officers said, staring at Sharon in dawning horror. You slapped the CEO? You physically assaulted the head of the entire airline? Marcus was now on his hands and knees, frantically trying to reassemble his radio, his hands shaking so violently he couldn't fit the battery back in. Isabella reached back into her comprehensive portfolio. She pulled out a thick, bound document covered in legal seals. This, she explained, is my personal stock ownership certificate. It documents my personal holdings of 14% of Ascend Air stock, making me the single largest individual shareholder. She paused, letting the billion-dollar implication settle over the cabin. In other words, I don't just work for this airline. A significant piece of it is mine. Captain Olson was now reading and rereading the appointment letter, as if trying to decipher a foreign language, willing the words to change. The seals were real. The signatures were original. The truth was undeniable and catastrophic. Ms. Rossi, he began, his voice trembling with a terror that was profound. We had no idea. Of course you had no idea, Isabella replied, her voice devastatingly calm. Because you didn't see a person. You saw a pair of worn jeans and scuffed sneakers, and you made an assumption. You saw what you wanted to see. A criminal. Tiffany's live stream had become a global phenomenon. The viewer count hit 35,000. Tortured CEO slap was now trending nationally, completely eclipsing Ontrasser's first-class fraud. The comments were a tidal wave of vindication. This is the greatest revenge story ever. Get her, Izzy. Destroy them. That flight attendant is done. I am literally crying tears of joy. This is better than any movie. But Isabella wasn't finished. She reached into her portfolio one last time and withdrew a thick manila folder marked in red ink. Confidential. Board of Directors eyes only. Discrimination investigation. Flight Crew 7B. There's something else everyone here needs to know, Isabella said, her voice now edged with ice. She opened the folder, revealing dozens of documents, color photographs, and legal testimonies. This folder contains the complete documentation of 47 separate discrimination complaints filed against this specific crew, Sharon Vickers, Marcus Thorne, and Frank Olson, over the past 18 months. A collective gasp swept through the passengers. 47 times, Isabella continued, her voice a metronome of condemnation, that passengers have been mistreated, harassed, and humiliated based on their race, their religion, their appearance, or their perceived economic status, all involving the three of you. She held up a photograph that made Sharon stumble backward in terror. Here's a photo of you, Ms. Vickers, refusing to serve a paying passenger in business class because you claimed his religious headwear was a security threat. She held up another document. Here is the evidence of you, Mr. Thorne, removing a family of color from a flight because their baby was crying, while 2 white families with louder children were allowed to remain. She looked at the captain. And here is the recorded testimony of 2 separate female co-pilots accusing you, Captain Olson, of repeated and unwanted sexual advances." Marcus was now desperately trying to speak into his reassembled radio. Patricia, please respond. We have a code black situation. The passenger, she's, oh dear God in heaven." Isabella's personal phone rang with an official, multi-line tone. She answered it on speaker. "Isabella, this is James Richardson, chairman of the board. I just saw the live stream. Are you all right?" The chairman. The single most powerful person in the company. "I'm fine physically, James, but we have a problem. We have multiple severe violations of federal policy happening on Flight 815, broadcast live to what appears to be half the country. I'm watching it now, along with the entire board." Richardson's voice was grim. "We're in an emergency session. Whatever you need, Isabella, you have our full support." Sharon had started to cry. Not tears of remorse, but tears of pure, unadulterated terror as the full, life-altering reality of her actions crashed down on her. Her career wasn't just over. It was annihilated. "Please," she sobbed. "Ms. Rossi, I'm begging you. I didn't know. I was just trying to do my job. I have a family, a mortgage." "Your job," Isabella replied with lethal precision, "is to treat every single passenger with dignity and respect, not just the ones who look rich." Marcus's radio finally crackled with Patricia Walsh's voice. "Marcus, the stock is tanking in after-hours trading. That live stream has been picked up by CNN. What did you do?" It was too late. One of the police officers carefully clipped his handcuffs back onto his belt and took a respectful step away from Isabella. "Miss Rossi," he said, "I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding." "No," Isabella corrected him, her voice ringing with authority. "This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was institutional discrimination, plain and simple. It was racial profiling and classism." She turned and looked directly into Tiffany's phone, speaking to her global audience. "My name is Isabella Rossi. I am the CEO of Ascend Air. For the last 3 years, I have been conducting unannounced passenger experience audits, flying anonymously on our own flights, to find exactly these kinds of problems." The live stream audience went wild, 40,000 viewers and climbing. "Today, I discovered that some of our employees believe it is acceptable to treat human beings like criminals based on nothing more than the clothes they wear. That discrimination, that arrogance, that poison, it ends tonight." Captain Olson was frantically scrolling through corporate policy manuals on his phone, trying to calculate the damage. The answer was career-ending. Sharon had collapsed into an empty seat, her body racked with sobs. Marcus just kept repeating, "This can't be happening, this can't be happening." But Isabella Rossi had one final devastating revelation. She pulled out her own phone and displayed the screen for Tiffany's camera. "I've been recording high-quality audio of this entire interaction from the moment I boarded," she said. The recording app on the screen clearly showed 37 minutes of continuous, uninterrupted audio. Every slur, every insult, every violation of federal civil rights law, it's all here. The live stream hit 50,000 viewers as people around the world watched the most spectacular reversal of fortune in modern history unfold. And Isabella Rossi was just getting started. 9:30 p.m., departure in 5 minutes. Isabella stood at the center of the storm, an island of calm in a sea of collapsing careers and stunned silence. Her phone was a constant vibration, a cascade of missed calls from the board, from legal, from every major news network. She ignored them all. "Since we're all here," she said, her voice now carrying the effortless command of the boardroom, "let's talk about numbers." She opened her portfolio to a section filled with financial charts. Ascend Air generated $52 billion in revenue last year. Our profit margins are razor thin. Every public relations disaster, every lawsuit, directly impacts shareholder value. Marcus Thorne, his face slick with sweat, just stared at her, his mouth agape. Isabella continued with the cold precision of a surgeon. The average cost of a single discrimination lawsuit in this industry is $2.3 million. That's before regulatory fines from the FAA. She paused, letting the number hang in the air, as Tiffany's live stream audience hit 55,000. Social media incidents of this magnitude, with a trending hashtag and verifiable video evidence, typically reduce a company's stock value by an average of 4% in the first 24 hours. Based on our current market capitalization, that represents a shareholder loss of approximately $900 million. Captain Olson's face went slack as he watched his entire retirement portfolio evaporate in his mind. Isabella withdrew another document, this one bearing the official seals of the Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration. Under Federal Aviation Regulation Part 382, the Air Carrier Access Act, and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, what happened here today constitutes multiple federal violations: physical assault of a passenger, willful destruction of travel documents, discrimination based on perceived economic status, filing a false report with law enforcement. Each of those violations carries a potential sentence of up to 2 years in federal prison. Oh, criminal charges? Sharon whispered, looking up from her tear-stained hands. We'll get to that, Isabella replied. But first, I want everyone to understand the cost of a poisoned culture. She produced her final document, the one she had been saving. The discrimination audit. This report doesn't just detail the 47 complaints against this crew, it shows a pattern across our entire network. She opened it to a page of damning statistics. Our internal investigation found that passengers of color are 340% more likely to be questioned about ticket validity. They are 450% more likely to be removed from flights for so-called disruptive behavior, even when their white counterparts exhibit the exact same conduct. The numbers landed like body blows. The live stream comments exploded with outrage. Those stats are horrifying. Systemic racism exposed live. Sue them for everything. Isabella's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID. James Richardson, chairman. She answered on speaker. Maya, the entire board is on an emergency call. We are prepared to offer whatever resolution you deem appropriate. The company's reputation is at stake. James, Isabella interrupted, I'm going to give everyone in this cabin a choice, right here, right now, in front of 60,000 witnesses. The cabin fell dead silent. Mr. Thorne, Ms. Vickers, Captain Olson, you have 2 options. I will explain them both, and you will decide immediately. Marcus tried to speak, but only a dry click came from his throat. Option 1, Isabella began. Immediate, indefinite suspension without pay, pending a full federal investigation. You will complete 120 hours of mandatory sensitivity and bias training. You will issue a public, written apology to be published in every major newspaper. This incident will be a permanent part of your professional record. If you are ever reinstated, it will be on a probationary basis for a minimum of 2 years. The 3 crew members looked at each other, their faces masks of horror. Option 2, she continued. Immediate termination for cause, a permanent ban from employment in the entire airline industry. You will be held personally and financially liable for all corporate damages resulting from this incident, including stock losses and legal fees. We will cooperate fully with the filing of federal criminal charges for civil rights violations. And you will be subpoenaed to testify in every related discrimination lawsuit brought against this company. She checked her watch. You have 30 seconds. Patricia Walsh's voice, now thin with panic, crackled over Marcus's radio. Marcus, the stock is dropping in real time. CNN is calling. The DOT is opening an investigation. What is happening? Marcus fumbled for the radio. Patricia, the passenger. She's the CEO. She's Isabella Rossi, the actual CEO. There was a burst of static, then a faint, horrified whisper. Oh my God, do whatever she says, Marcus. Anything she wants. The board is in total crisis. Breaking news alerts were now cascading across Isabella's phone. Ascend Air CEO assaulted by flight attendant in shocking viral video. Airline stock plummets amid discrimination scandal. The livestream audience had hit 75,000. Ascend Air shame was trending globally. Time's up, Isabella announced. Your decisions. Brenda spoke first, her voice a broken whisper. Option 1, please. Option 1. Captain Olson nodded frantically. Option 1, absolutely. Marcus looked around wildly, as if seeking an escape hatch from reality itself. Option 1, he croaked. Excellent, Isabella said coldly. Those decisions are now a matter of public record. But this isn't about 3 people. This is about changing a sick system. Her phone rang again. She showed the caller ID to Tiffany's camera. Secretary of Transportation, U.S. Government. She answered. Ms. Rossi, this is Secretary Johnson. We are prepared to launch a comprehensive industry-wide investigation into discriminatory practices. You have my full cooperation, Mr. Secretary, Isabella said, but I'm announcing immediate changes that will not wait for a federal mandate. She looked directly into the camera. Effective immediately, Ascend Air will implement the following mandatory reforms. First, every single crew member, from the cockpit to the cabin, will wear a body camera during all passenger interactions. Second, we are launching a new Passenger Bill of Rights mobile app that allows for the real-time reporting of discrimination, with every report triggering an immediate, independent corporate review. Third, executive bonuses for all management, myself included, will now be directly tied to a measurable reduction in discrimination incidents and an increase in passenger satisfaction scores among minority and economically disadvantaged travelers. We will put our money where our mouth is. The live stream audience was in a frenzy. Yes, systemic change. This is how you use power for good. Every airline needs to do this. Marcus's radio crackled a final time. It was Patricia. Marcus, the board wants me to ask, is there anything else? The stock is down 6%. Isabella looked at the crew who had humiliated her, at the passengers who had cheered for it, and at the cameras that had captured it all. Actually, Patricia, there is one more thing. The cabin held its breath. I want every person on this plane who watched this happen and said nothing, who cheered when I was abused, who assumed my guilt based on my clothes. I want them to remember this moment, because the next time they see injustice, they will have a choice to be part of the problem or to be part of the solution. She closed her portfolio and returned it to her bag. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to San Francisco. We're already late. 4:12 p.m. Departure in 3 minutes. The aircraft cabin had transformed from a scene of discrimination into something resembling a corporate crisis center. Maya's phone buzzed continuously with calls from news networks, civil rights organizations, and government agencies. Jessica's live stream had reached 85,000 viewers as news outlets began covering the story in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, Isabella announced, her voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of command. Before this flight departs, there are immediate consequences. She opened her phone and dialed into an emergency board meeting. James, patch me through to the full board. Everyone needs to hear this. Chairman Richardson's voice came through the speaker. Isabella, we're here. The entire board, legal counsel, and our PR team. Good, Isabella said, because these changes are effective immediately. She looked directly at Sharon, who was still a crumpled heap in the seat. Sharon Vickers, you are suspended without pay, effective immediately. Report to Human Resources within 48 hours for disciplinary proceedings. Sharon nodded through her tears. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Steve Morrison, she continued, you are demoted from your managerial position to the ground crew, effective immediately. Your salary is reduced to entry-level wages, and you will complete 160 hours of sensitivity training before you are even considered for a supervisory role again. Marcus's face crumpled. Ms. Rossi, please. I have a mortgage, kids in college. You should have considered that before you judged a human being by the tear in her jeans, Isabella retorted. Captain Olson, you are stripped of your senior captain status and reassigned to domestic short-haul flights. Your pay is reduced by 40%. You will undergo a mandatory psychological evaluation before you are allowed to command an aircraft again. The captain's decorated career was dissolving before his eyes. Ma'am, I've flown for 37 years. And in 37 years, Isabella countered, you never learned to treat every passenger with basic dignity. The live stream audience cheered. Justice served. This is accountability. Finally, someone with power doing the right thing. Isabella addressed the conference call. James, I want these policy changes implemented across our entire global operation within 30 days. Body cameras for all crew. Automatic suspension for any discrimination complaint pending investigation. No exceptions. We are partnering with the NAACP and the ACLU to create an independent civilian oversight committee with the authority to impose penalties. Isabella, the chairman's voice cautioned, our legal team is concerned about the liability. The liability of continuing to allow this poison in our company is far greater, she stated flatly. These changes are non-negotiable. She then turned to Linda Lane, the gate supervisor, who had watched the entire affair in stunned silence. Linda, you are promoted to Regional Operations Manager, effective immediately. Your first assignment is overseeing the implementation of these new policies at this airport. Linda's eyes widened. Ms. Rossi, Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Isabella said, because you were the only one here who looked at me and saw a person, not a problem. Breaking news alerts flashed across her screen. Ascend Air Stock rebounds as CEO announces sweeping reforms. Transportation Secretary praises airline's swift response. Civil rights leaders call Rossi a model for corporate leadership. The police officer approached respectfully. Ms. Rossi, do you wish to press criminal charges against the crew? Isabella considered this, as 90,000 people watched her on the live stream. Officer, she said, I want something more powerful than punishment. I want them to spend the next year of their lives learning why their assumptions were so wrong. I want them to become advocates for the change they fought so hard against. She turned to face Sharon directly. Part of your probation, Sharon, will involve you speaking at our new diversity training sessions. You will tell your story, all of it, to thousands of our employees. You will help us prevent this from ever happening again. Sharon looked up, a flicker of something other than terror in her eyes. I will, she whispered. I promise, I will make this right. Good, Isabella said, because accountability isn't about revenge, it's about growth. Her phone rang again. The caller ID read, Oprah Winfrey. She declined the call. I think we've had enough cameras for one day, she said with a slight smile. The departure board updated. Flight 8:15. Departure 1 minute. A new flight attendant appeared, a young woman named Maria Santos, her eyes wide with nervousness. Ms. Rossi, I'm Maria, your new flight attendant. How can I make your flight more comfortable? Isabella looked at Maria's name tag and the small pride flag pin next to it. Maria, treat every single passenger who boards this plane exactly the way you just treated me, with respect, professionalism, and kindness. That's all anyone asks. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. The first-class passengers had been silent, but now, one by one, they approached her. The man who had called her a scammer spoke first. Ms. Rossi, I owe you an apology. I made an assumption. I was wrong. Others followed. I'm sorry I just recorded instead of helping. Thank you for handling that with such grace. Tiffany, still streaming, approached. Ms. Rossi, my audience wants to know, how do you feel right now? Isabella looked into the camera, addressing the 95,000 people watching. I feel hopeful, she said. Not because I won, but because this proves that change is possible when we choose empathy over prejudice. She paused. This was never about me being a CEO. This is for every person who gets treated the way I was today, but doesn't have the power to fight back. This is for the single mothers, the students, the immigrants who are judged and dismissed every single day and have no voice. The live stream comments had transformed. This woman is a true leader. This is what justice looks like. Isabella returned to her seat. 2A, the seat she was assigned all along. A new voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your new captain. We are cleared for departure. As the plane finally taxied onto the runway, Isabella opened her laptop. She began to type a memo, addressed to every Ascend Air employee worldwide. The subject line read, Today, we change. 3 months later, Isabella sat in her corner office overlooking the Dallas skyline. Framed newspaper headlines adorned her wall. The slap heard, round the world, how one CEO changed an industry. The Rossi effect. Airlines embrace reform. Her assistant entered. Ms. Rossi, the quarterly discrimination report is ready. Isabella scanned the document. Complaints were down 78%. Customer satisfaction among minority travelers was up 45%. The company stock price was up 23%. But the most important numbers were the zeros. 0 passenger assaults. 0 boarding passes destroyed in anger. A text came through from Sharon Vickers. Ms. Rossi, I just finished leading my 40th bias training session. I'm teaching the crew in Detroit tomorrow. Thank you for giving me a chance to grow instead of just firing me. Isabella smiled. Redemption was real. The ripple effects had spread. Competing airlines, fearing their own viral incidents, had adopted the Rossi protocols. Body cams, bias training, and accountability metrics were becoming the industry standard. Her phone rang. It was Oprah again. This time she answered. Oprah, with all due respect, this story isn't about me, she said before the host could speak. It's about the millions of people who face this every day without a camera crew. That's exactly why I want to talk to you, Isabella, Oprah replied. Your voice can inspire so many. Then let's do something different, Isabella proposed. Instead of interviewing me, let's highlight the everyday people who are creating change in their own communities. 2 weeks later, The Rossi Effect aired, featuring not a CEO, but a teacher who challenged bias in her classroom, a store manager who changed his hiring practices, a neighbor who stood up to racist comments, each one inspired by the story that began on Flight 815. Isabella still flew regularly, always in jeans and a t-shirt, always watching. On a recent flight, she saw a young man in a hoodie nervously approach the first-class cabin. The flight attendant greeted him with a warm smile. Welcome aboard, sir. Can I help you with your bag? No suspicion, no accusation, just service. Progress. Isabella opened her laptop and began her weekly blog post. 3 months ago, I was slapped and humiliated because someone made an assumption about me based on how I looked. But here's the real lesson. Change doesn't happen when one person in power stands up. Real change happens when every single one of us chooses to see each other with fresh eyes. So here is my challenge to you. Notice the people around you. Ask questions instead of making assumptions. Listen instead of judging. Speak up instead of staying silent. Because the next Isabella Rossi might not be a CEO. She might be someone who needs you to be her voice. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories that refuse to be silenced, and tell us in the comments, what will you do differently now? Because real change starts with you. The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At Black Voices Uncut, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.